Maya stood in her Seattle apartment, the morning light soft and gray as it slipped through the blinds. The rain had already begun, steady, quiet, almost comforting, yet nothing felt calm inside her. She stared at her phone, reading Ethan's message again and again, each time feeling something different. "I hope life treats you kindly. I'm moving on, and I genuinely wish you happiness, always." The words were gentle, simple, and painfully final. She had expected distance, maybe cold silence or even bitterness, but never this kind of gentle closure. It made her heartbeat feel strangely heavier. She placed her phone on the counter, though her eyes kept drifting back toward it, as if the message might somehow change. For months, they had lived in this odd space apart, yet emotionally tangled. Meyer always believed Ethan would circle back, that one day he'd reach out with hope or uncertainty, but this message held neither. It wasn't an attempt to reconnect or reopen wounds. It was clean, calm, and full of sincerity, and that sincerity hurt more than any argument ever could. She suddenly realized that his peace meant he had truly let go. Walking to the window, she pressed her palm lightly against the cold glass. Seattle's December rain washed down the buildings, blurring the city into soft, silver shapes. It reminded her of the nights Ethan would quietly sit beside her, sipping tea, saying nothing but offering everything through presence alone. She used to overlook those moments. Now they replayed in her mind like scenes from a movie she never appreciated while it was still running. She wondered if he knew how deeply this peaceful goodbye would echo inside her. Maya wrapped her arms around herself, as though trying to protect a part of her heart she had ignored for too long. She remembered their breakup. No shouting, no insults, just two exhausted hearts drifting apart. Yet Ethan had still been gentle, still trying to lessen her pain even when he was hurting too. And she had been distant, convinced he'd always be there waiting. That assumption now curled inside her with a sting. His message revealed something she didn't want to face. He loved her deeply, and she might have only realized it now. She replayed the final sentence of his text in her mind. "I genuinely wish you happiness, always." People rarely wish that for someone they resent. People rarely say that when they want to prove a point. This was the kind of goodbye a man gives only when he has no bitterness left, only acceptance. And that somehow was what broke her, because his peace showed her everything she had missed. It showed her the value of a heart she hadn't held carefully enough. And in that quiet, rainy Seattle morning, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in months, an ache that came not from losing him, but from finally understanding him too late. Weeks passed, and the tempo of Seattle continued as if nothing had changed. Buses humming, ferries crossing the water, coffee shops buzzing. But inside Maya, something subtle had shifted. Ethan's message kept replaying in her mind like a soft whisper she couldn't escape. Not because it hurt, but because of what it revealed. She had expected resentment or cold detachment, something dramatic or messy. Instead, he chose peace, and that peace carried a strange weight. It felt as though he had matured past the pain, while she was still holding fragments of their past without realizing it. One chilly afternoon, she walked through Pike Place Market, letting the atmosphere wrap around her. The smell of roasted coffee, fresh bread, and ocean breeze mixed together. She noticed little things that reminded her of Ethan, the sunflowers he used to buy for her, the tiny bakery where he always bought cinnamon rolls, the street musician playing a song he once hummed absent-mindedly while cooking. None of it made her cry. Instead, it made her think. His gentle departure wasn't a punishment. It was a reflection of the type of man he had been all along. Patient, calm, and quietly loyal. The realization softened her. She remembered how he always tried to solve arguments instead of winning them, how he apologized even when he wasn't wrong, how he listened with genuine interest when she talked about her dreams. Back then, she thought he'd always be available, always trying. She never imagined he would someday simply let go without any bitterness, yet that was exactly what made the difference. A peaceful exit forces the truth to surface, the truth of what you lost, not because someone left loudly, but because someone left gracefully. And she felt the weight of that grace now. That evening, while standing by the waterfront, Maya watched the ferries glide across Elliott Bay, their lights reflecting in the dark, rippling water. Couples walked past her, wrapped in scarves, hands intertwined, laughing softly. It reminded her of the evenings she and Ethan spent right there, sharing fries, leaning against the rail, dreaming about trips they never took. For a moment, she wondered if he stood there too sometimes, but deep down she knew he didn't linger in the past the way she had. He had moved forward, not out of pride, but out of healing. She closed her eyes and breathed in the cold air, finally acknowledging what had been sitting quietly in her heart. When someone moves on peacefully, it doesn't leave you angry, it leaves you reflective. It teaches you more about yourself than them. Ethan's message wasn't just closure. It was a gentle mirror showing her where she could grow, how she could love better, and how peace is its own kind of strength. And as she walked away from the waterfront, Maya realized that she wasn't mourning him anymore. She was mourning the version of herself that didn't understand his value until now. Days blended into weeks until January settled over Seattle with its familiar chill. Maya found herself waking up earlier, not out of excitement, but from a strange restlessness she couldn't ignore. Something inside her wanted change, real change, not just thoughts or regrets. She kept remembering the peace Ethan carried, how grounded and mature it felt. For the first time, she wondered what her life would look like if she tried to grow the same way instead of holding on to old patterns. The realization didn't hurt, it inspired her. She wanted to become the kind of person she wished she had been with him. She started small. Morning walks, journaling, reading books she once abandoned halfway, attending a pottery class in Capitol Hill. Something she always talked about doing, but never actually did. The more she focused on herself, the more she understood that Ethan's peaceful eggs, it wasn't meant to make her feel guilty. It was meant to set both of them free. Whenever she felt the familiar ache, she reminded herself it wasn't longing for the relationship. It was longing for inner clarity. She noticed her mind wasn't stuck in the past anymore. It was trying to clean the parts she had ignored for too long. One evening, she sat alone in a warm little cafe near Lake Union, her fingers wrapped around a cup of chai latte. She stared out the window, watching reflections dance on the water, and felt something unexpected: gratitude. Not the dramatic, emotional kind, just a quiet appreciation that came from seeing the truth clearly. Ethan had never tried to hurt her, never played games. He simply chose himself in the most respectful way possible. That meant she could choose herself now, too. The closure he gave her wasn't a goodbye. It was a turning point disguised as one. As winter deepened, Maya started feeling lighter. She stopped checking his social media. She stopped replaying old conversations. She stopped wondering whether he missed her or thought about her. Not because she no longer cared, but because she finally understood that his journey wasn't tied to hers anymore. One snowy evening, she walked to Gas Works Park and stood on the hill overlooking the city lights. The cold wind brushed her cheeks, refreshing and almost symbolic. For the first time in months, she felt present, fully present. It struck her how long she had lived half awake emotionally. Now she was waking up piece by piece. By the end of the month, she realized something profound. She didn't want him back, not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but because the woman she was becoming wouldn't fit into the old story anymore. Ethan's peaceful exit had pushed her into a different chapter, one she didn't know she needed. It wasn't about heartbreak anymore, it was about self-evolution. And as she walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, she finally felt what she had been searching for ever since his message arrived. A quiet, steady sense of inner peace blooming right where the pain used to be.